The moment didn't begin with shouting. It began with laughter. Not the kind that fills a room with warmth, but the kind that quietly strips someone of dignity while pretending it's harmless. Daniel knew that kind of laughter. He had been hearing it more often lately. But that afternoon, standing in the living room he had once proudly called home, something about it felt different, sharper, final, and somehow planned. Stories like this don't start with betrayal. They start with small silences, the kind you ignore because you're trying to keep something together. Daniel wasn't always the quiet one. Back in university, he was the guy people gathered around, not because he talked the loudest, but because when he spoke, it meant something. He studied civil engineering, but his real talent was solving problems that weren't written in textbooks. Friends used to joke that Daniel could fix anything except himself. They weren't entirely wrong. He met Amara during his final year. She was the opposite of him in almost every way. Confident, expressive, always certain of what she wanted. While Daniel measured his words, Amara used hers like tools, shaping every room she walked into. She admired his calm. He admired her fire. At least, that's what they both believed in the beginning. Years later, that same fire would become something else entirely. "Daniel, are you even listening?" Her voice snapped him back to the present. He blinked, realizing he had been staring at the floor for too long. Amara stood across from him, dressed in a navy outfit that looked effortless but probably wasn't. Her hair was wrapped neatly, her posture straight, her expression entertained. Beside her stood a man Daniel had never seen before, well-dressed, relaxed, smiling like he already belonged. And that was the first thing that felt wrong. "I asked you a question," Amara said, swirling the drink in her glass. Daniel cleared his throat. "You didn't tell me we had a guest." The man chuckled softly. Amara didn't. "That's because," she said, tilting her head slightly, "I didn't think it required your approval." There it was again. That tone, light, but cutting. Daniel nodded slowly. "Right." He turned to the man and forced a polite smile. "I'm Daniel." "I know," the man replied smoothly. "I'm Victor." No last name, no explanation, just Victor. Something about the way he said it made Daniel feel like he had walked into a conversation that had already been going on long before he arrived. Amara stepped forward slightly, closing the space between her and Victor without even noticing she had done it. Or maybe she did. "Victor and I were just discussing business," she said casually. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Business?" "Yes," she said, "the kind that actually moves forward." Victor smiled again. This time, Daniel didn't return it. There was a time when Amara used to talk to him about everything, ideas, plans, even her doubts. But lately, her conversations had become selective, short, strategic, and now shared with someone else. "I didn't know you were working on anything new," Daniel said carefully. Amara laughed, not loud, but enough. "That's because you've been distracted," she said. That word lingered in the air. Distracted. It sounded harmless, but it wasn't. Daniel felt it settle in his chest. He had been working longer hours, yes. The construction firm he worked for had downsized, leaving him with more responsibility and less security. Projects were delayed, payments inconsistent. He was trying, but trying doesn't always look impressive from the outside. Victor leaned slightly against the table, observing the exchange like it was entertainment. "You know," he said, "sometimes progress requires a shift in perspective." Daniel looked at him. "And sometimes," Daniel replied calmly, "it requires patience." Victor's smile didn't change, but something behind it did. Amara sighed. "Daniel, please," she said, "let's not do this." "Do what?" he asked. "This." She gestured lightly between them. "The tension. It's unnecessary." Unnecessary. That word again. Everything uncomfortable had suddenly become unnecessary. Daniel took a slow breath. "I just want to understand what's going on," he said. Amara exchanged a quick glance with Victor, and for a brief moment, something passed between them. Something silent, something practiced. That was when Daniel felt it. Not suspicion, not jealousy. Something deeper, like he had missed a chapter of his own life. "There's nothing to understand," Amara said finally. "Victor is helping me with an investment opportunity." Daniel frowned slightly. "Since when do you make investment decisions without even mentioning them?" Amara shrugged. "Since I realized waiting for the right time was just another way of standing still." That hit harder than it should have, because it wasn't just about money. It was about how she saw him now, standing still. Daniel glanced around the room, the couch they picked together, the framed photos on the wall, the small imperfections he used to fix without being asked. Everything felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. "You could have told me," he said quietly. Amara's expression softened for a fraction of a second. Then it disappeared. "I tried," she said. "You just didn't hear me." Victor stepped in smoothly. "Well," he said, clapping his hands lightly once, "I should probably get going. I don't want to interrupt domestic matters." Domestic matters. The way he said it made it sound temporary. Amara smiled at him, a real smile this time. "Of course," she said. "I'll walk you out." Daniel watched as they moved toward the door together. Close, comfortable, too comfortable. And just before they stepped out, Victor said something quietly. Daniel couldn't hear the words, but he saw Amara laugh again. That same laugh. The door closed, and the silence that followed was heavier than anything that had been said. Daniel stood there for a long time, not moving, not thinking, just absorbing. Something wasn't right, and it wasn't just about Victor. It was the way everything felt slightly off, like a room where the furniture had been rearranged while you were asleep. He walked slowly toward the window, watching Victor's car pull away. Sleek, black, expensive. Amara returned a few moments later. Her expression had changed again, back to neutral, controlled. "You're overreacting," she said before he could speak. Daniel turned to her. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't have to." He studied her face, trying to find something familiar, something real. "Amara, what's going on?" This time, his voice wasn't defensive. It was tired. She hesitated just for a second. Then she walked past him and placed her glass on the table. "Do you ever feel like you're meant for more?" she asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she turned to face him, "do you ever look at your life and think, this isn't it?" Daniel blinked. "I thought we were building something," he said. Amara nodded slowly. "We were." Were. That single word shifted everything. "But building requires momentum," she continued. "And lately, it feels like I'm the only one moving." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. That's not fair." "Isn't it?" she asked. He opened his mouth to respond, then stopped, because part of him wasn't sure anymore. And that was the most dangerous part. Not the accusation, but the doubt it created. Amara crossed her arms. "I'm tired of waiting, Daniel." "For what?" "For you to become who you keep saying you will." Silence. That one didn't sound like frustration. It sounded like a decision. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he saw it. Not anger, not disappointment, but distance. "How long have you felt like this?" he asked quietly. Amara didn't answer immediately, and that hesitation said more than any words could. "Long enough," she said finally. Something inside Daniel shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. Because now, it wasn't just a bad day or a misunderstanding. It was something that had been growing quietly behind his back, and somehow Victor was part of it. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Is that why he's here?" he asked. Amara didn't respond, but she didn't deny it either. And that silence? That was the loudest answer of all. Outside, the sky had begun to darken. Clouds gathering, heavy, uncertain. Inside, something else was building too, something neither of them was ready to face. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I don't recognize this anymore," he said. Amara looked at him, and for a brief moment, there was something there, something almost like regret. But then it faded. "Maybe that's because you've been holding on to a version of us that doesn't exist anymore," she said. The words landed, slow, heavy, and just like that, the foundation he thought they had built together began to crack. But what Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't see yet, was that this wasn't just about a failing marriage. It was about something much bigger, something hidden, something that had already set everything in motion long before that afternoon. Because while Daniel stood there trying to understand what he had lost, there were people, powerful people, who had been quietly watching him for years, waiting, and very soon they were going to step into his life, whether he was ready or not. But when they did, the truth wouldn't just change how Amara saw him. It would change everything. And the next time she laughed, it wouldn't sound the same. The knock didn't come that night. It came the next morning, quiet, controlled, and deliberate. The kind of knock that doesn't ask for permission. It announces arrival. Daniel almost ignored it. After everything that had been said the day before, sleep hadn't really come. He had spent most of the night sitting on the edge of the bed, replaying words that didn't sound the same anymore. "We were. I'm tired of waiting. This isn't it." By morning, the house felt unfamiliar, not because anything had changed physically, but because something invisible had shifted beyond repair. The knock came again, 3 times, measured. Amara stepped out of the bedroom, already dressed, already alert, as if she had been expecting something. That was the first signal. "You're not going to get that?" Daniel asked. She glanced at him, then at the door, then back at him. "No," she said calmly. "You should." That was the second signal. Daniel walked toward the door slowly, his mind trying to catch up with something his instincts had already understood. When he opened it, he didn't see confusion. He saw order. 2 men stood outside, both in dark suits, not flashy, precise. Behind them, parked neatly along the street, were 3 black vehicles, not the kind you rent, the kind that move with purpose. "Mr. Daniel Okoye?" one of the men asked. His voice was calm, professional, but there was no uncertainty in it. Daniel nodded slightly. Yes. The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim envelope. No logo, no decoration, just weight. "We've been looking for you," he said. Those words should have sounded reassuring. They didn't. "For what?" Daniel asked carefully. The man exchanged a brief glance with his colleague, then looked back at Daniel. "To inform you," he said, "that your presence is required regarding the estate of Mr. Emmanuel Okoye." Daniel froze. The name didn't just land, it echoed. His father. But that didn't make sense, because, as far as Daniel knew, his father had died years ago, quietly, without headlines, without this. "I think there's a mistake," Daniel said. "There isn't," the man replied. Behind him, Daniel felt Amara's presence. She had moved closer, listening, watching. "Mr. Okoye passed away recently," the man continued, "and as his only surviving son, you've been named primary successor." Silence. Daniel blinked. Successor to what? This time, the man paused, just long enough for the weight of the next words to settle before they were even spoken. Everything, the air in the room, changed. Amara stepped forward. "What does that mean?" she asked sharply. The man turned his attention to her briefly, measured, then back to Daniel. "It means," he said calmly, "your father was not who you believed he was." Daniel's heartbeat slowed, not sped up. Slowed, because suddenly everything was too loud to process quickly. He built one of the largest privately held infrastructure empires in West and Central Africa, the man continued. Energy, transport, real estate, telecommunications. Amara's grip tightened slightly around her own arm. "And as of yesterday," the man finished, "that entire portfolio has been transferred to you." Daniel stared at him, waiting for the correction, the clarification, the part where someone says, "This is all a misunderstanding." It didn't come. Instead, the man extended the envelope toward him again. This time, Daniel took it. Inside were documents, official, stamped, detailed in a way that fiction never is. Numbers, assets, names of companies Daniel had unknowingly passed by his entire life. And one final figure, estimated net worth. Daniel didn't react the way people imagined someone would. No shock, no excitement, no sudden transformation, just stillness. Because the question forming in his mind wasn't, "How much is this worth?" It was, "Why didn't he tell me?" Behind him, Amara finally spoke. "How much?" she asked. The room went quiet again. Daniel didn't answer. He just handed her the document. She scanned it once, then again, slower, and then it happened. The shift. Her posture changed. Her expression softened, not with emotion, but with realization. Victor's words from the previous day suddenly made sense. Sometimes progress requires a shift in perspective. But this wasn't perspective. This was power. Amara looked up at Daniel, and for the first time in a long time, she saw him differently. "Daniel," she said softly, but he didn't respond.